In today's video, I'm going to show you how to get a really interesting soft focus watercolor background. You won't get any drying lines because with the method we're going to use, it simply isn't possible. So before we carry on with today's video, I'm just going to go and feed this monster because he won't stop meowing whilst I'm trying to film. So hopefully Gimlet will be quiet now for 30 seconds. It's dark and rainy here, so like most of us, he just wants to stay indoors and eat stodge. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to use gum arabic for a watercolor background. Not only does this allow you to create a soft focus background without worrying about drying lines, but it also gives you the opportunity to work more slowly because it slows down drying time. I'll explain more about what it is later on and how to use it. But it's also going to allow you to get some really cool soft focus background effects. And depending how you use it, it can actually look a bit more like acrylics than watercolor. Anyway, it's one of my favorite techniques. I'm going to start you with an overview of the painting I'm doing. I'll also explain where you can get the full-length tutorial of it because we're mostly concentrating just on the background here, but I will briefly take you through each stage of the drawing and the painting so you can just see where I am with it. So let's point the camera downwards and get started. Now let's have a very quick run through of where I am with this painting. So I'm going to whiz you through. So this is the photograph I'm using and here is the drawing which I did by eye. You'll notice that there are a few elements that I've left out of the drawing and one or two adjustments I've made for the sake of composition, but we may hint at those elements as we go through and pop the background in. And I'm just cleaning up before I start painting. Now, if you're watching this video on the very day it goes out, I do have a sale on my drawing course at the moment. I'll leave full details of that in the description of this video. Somebody had a go at me last week for promoting my courses. So, I could stop doing that because obviously I don't have bills to pay like regular people because artists, we live on fresh air and happy thoughts. But if you are interested in drawing course, do take a look at that one. And next we'll go on to the painting. I'm starting to put my shadows and my pink in, the soft shadows at least, the harder ones will go on later. Now some of you are going to ask me, where can I get the full tutorial, Michelle? You're only showing us mostly the background in this tutorial. Now this is actually being filmed in entirety, but it's not going to be released until next year at the moment being 2024. This is actually going to be part of my flower painting course. I'm making a watercolor flower painting course next year. It'll probably be released in spring at some point, and this is going to be one of the full-length tutorials that gets released as part of that. I'm really excited to be making a flower painting course because it's just one of my favorite things to do. It's such a thing that's suited so well to watercolors. It really, really is. Now, whenever I have a new course, they do always come out on sale. And the way to find out about that is either to be in my Facebook group or preferably to be on my mailing list. Now, if you download anything from the video description, I've got some free stuff down there you can download from my course site. Or if you've bought any of my courses, you will get to go on my mailing list, and that way you'll get to find out about the courses when they launch. And the biggest discount is always on course launch. Occasionally I'll have sales, but we never go as low priced as we do when these things first launch. So do make sure you're on that mailing list. I know emails can be a pain, can't they? But I always try and give a little bit of value in my emails, and there's generally one a week. Very occasionally, if there's a sale on, I'll go up to 2 or 3, but generally speaking, there's 1 or less emails per week. They also remind you of all the free things like the YouTube videos. So if you ever miss those when they come out, the email will give you a link to those as well. I'm going to carry on now and take you quickly through the rest of this painting. Next up in this painting, I'm adding the stronger shadows, and now I'm just going in with the foliage. When all of the foliage is done, and there isn't that much of it, I'll be ready to do the background. And we've got our strong shadows in, just finishing off these last little bits of foliage, and next we're on to the background. Let's look next at what gum arabic is and how it's used. Now we're going to paint our background, but first of all, let's have a chat about what gum arabic is and why I'm choosing to use it in this particular background, its properties and how we use it. So I've got a scrap of paper here that I can paint on. Now, almost every tube of paint, like this one here, will contain a certain amount of gum arabic. It's one of the most popular binders. It's also a natural glue, so it comes from the sap of the acacia tree. It's dried into sort of crystallized rocks, and then it's ground, mixed with water and sold to artists. So as well as being in your paint like this, you can buy it in a separate bottle like this. So I've got a couple of bottles here. I'm actually going to use this one today. This is Jackman's Gum Arabic. But I've also got this one here, which is De La Roni. Now, one of the mistakes that I made when I first bought one of these products years ago was I dipped my brush in. I thought the brush was clean, but it has a way of sort of re-releasing dried paint that might be lurking in your brush. So I do recommend that you always decant this, which is what I'll be doing today, putting it in a little dish so that I know that everything that's left is nice and clean and can be used another time. We don't want to waste money. So what does gum arabic do? Well, one of the main things that it does is it slows down drying time. So you could put a small amount of it in the water or in with your paint. It is water soluble and you can slow the paint's drying time down. Now, don't get too excited about that. You know, I wouldn't want you to think that you could stick it in every bit of paint that you ever had and suddenly your watercolor wouldn't dry as quickly, because it does give a certain effect and it is noticeable. So I would only suggest using it for a couple of things. Places where I like to use it are for backgrounds. I also love to use it for water. The reason is it dries slightly shiny. Now, another thing it does, because it's quite thick and sticky, is it does allow you to actually use it as if you were painting with something more like acrylics, by which I mean you can take a stiffer brush like this one and actually get sort of visible marks and visible brush strokes in a way that is much different to watercolor painting, because with watercolor painting, if you make marks like that, you end up with differences in water levels, things tend to run, and then you get weird looking bleed lines. Brush marks don't usually look good in watercolor, but they do look good in acrylic and oils. So we can use it like that. I'm actually going for more of a soft focus effect today, so I won't be doing that, but do experiment. It's good fun. So this one has separated slightly because I haven't used it for a while. And that's just because I know this is a good quality product. It's got a lot of gum arabic in. It's a handmade product, so it's not going to be quite as full of chemicals or as slick perhaps as some other brands. Now, what we're going to do is we're just going to tip it slightly. You don't want to shake things up too much, particularly not gum arabic or masking fluid or anything like that. You just end up with a load of bubbles in there. I'm then going to remove the childproof cap, and I always have trouble with these. All I'm going to do is tip some in this little dish so that I can work from here. Now, I don't apply it neat to the paper. I do apply it quite thickly. I have heard horror stories that if you apply it neat, it can end up cracking later on. I think that might be a bit of an urban myth, but, you know, let's not take any risks. What I tend to do is, rather than, mix water into it, I just make sure that my brush is wet when I pick up some of the gum arabic. I like to place it directly on the paper like this. And then I'll pick up some paint and add my paint to it. Bearing in mind that if you're going into pan paints or whatever paints you're going into, you're going to obviously transfer some of the gum arabic into those paints. So you might want to clean that up a bit at the end of your painting session. As I said, it is water soluble. So let's take some paint and add it. I'm going to put a couple of colours on. Can you see already, how much more smeary it is? And if you want to do a wet into wet background and you've always really struggled because it just dries too quickly, you've now increased the drying time from, a couple of minutes, 30 seconds, depending how hot it is where you live, to 5 or 10 minutes. And you can allow it to dry on a soft edge like that. And later on, you can just add some more to it, a little bit of water to agitate, and you should be able to get rid of that mark. What we can also do is, I've gone quite dark here, haven't I already, but I'll pick up some darker paint. We can also paint into areas like this. We'll get softness, but we won't really get that running that you get with watercolor. I am keeping the paint quite thick just in case. You can see how it works really well for water reflections. Even once this is dry on camera, it'll be quite hard for you to see the shine because honestly, shiny things just don't show up on camera. but I can assure you that it does have a very subtle shine, so it's great for water reflections, but I'm going to use it in this case for making a wet into wet background without any drying lines. So Gimlet at the moment has finished eating. He's now crashing about upstairs. So if you hear any strange noises, it's him chasing a little ball upstairs. Like myself, he's getting on in years, so it won't last long. He'll go to sleep soon, and thank goodness for that, because I've got a lot of filming to do today. So at this point in the video, as always, can I ask you to like, share, leave a comment or free subscribe? You'll notice that I haven't got any sponsorship on this video, and it's not because I don't get offers, and it's not because I'm against taking sponsorships. It's just that I haven't had anything that aligns with my values so far. I had a couple of very amusing sponsorship offers this week. So one person asked me to promote hair straighteners. This is my hair. You know, I have spent much time with my head upside down and products trying to get volume into my hair. I am never going to need hair straighteners in this lifetime. Lucky you might say, but I was a teenager in the 80s and this was not fashionable. I had a hard time, I can tell you, because everybody wanted big hair and curls. The other thing I was asked to promote was a video game. It's a video game, you know, a little phone game that I've seen people on other channels promote. I think it's quite a good product, but here's the problem. I don't like games. I've never liked games. Even when I was a kid, I didn't like games. I don't like board games. I don't like racket games. I don't like video games. And I don't like card games. I know this is very weird, but if you put me on a desert island with a PlayStation, I would probably go swimming. I would watch ants. I would sit and watch ants for hours, and I would be quite fascinated by that. So there's no way that I can promote a video game. I've no idea what I would say. Well, here's a video game. It's got buttons and things you can press and levels. I mean, it would be a total disaster. So you can thank me for not taking any annoying sponsorships this month by pressing the like button or sharing this video for me. Let's get back to today's tutorial. So now we've seen what this product is and what it does, let's get started. We're going to work methodically around our painting. Now, I realise you can't see all of this painting. It's quite a small painting, but you still can't see all of it on camera because it's portrait shape. So I'll drop a picture in so you can see where we are with it. And we're going to pop our background in. So I want to start methodically working around. There's also what I like to call islands. So if you have a look in here, we've got little gaps where they're sort of isolated completely within other painted areas. So I want to put those in too, probably with a slightly smaller brush. I want to consider, you know, that I'm right-handed, so I don't want to be leaning in my work, so it wouldn't, for example, start down the bottom right-hand side. I'd more likely start around this side and work round. Now, you might see me kind of holding the brush quite awkwardly. If you're doing it at home, for goodness sake, just turn your paper around, but I can't always do that on YouTube because it's, you know, people get a little bit dizzy. So I'll be working in one direction and keeping it still, but of course, when you're working on your own stuff, just move your board around. It's much, much easier, so that you're not leaning in anything. You'll notice that there are a few, let me see if I can find them. There's a few marks and splatters on the paper. I was working with quite wet paint in places. That always tends to lead to a little bit of splattering. I haven't even bothered to try and remove it, to be honest, because it's just going to dissolve into the background. Now, one thing that I will do next is I will remove some of the pencil marks. If we look here, for example, I need these pencil marks here to show me where the edge of the white petal is, but I certainly don't need any that are around darker areas like this. Always good to clean those up as early as you can. Make sure your painting is dry, of course, and then we'll start putting the paint on. Now, I'm going to start down here with painting. One thing I like to consider with a background is, you know, the overall effect, because we imagine that flowers like this are outdoors, they're in a garden, they're in some kind of landscape. And so to get darker, stronger colours, more green-based colours lower down, possibly more lighter colours, some whites and some blues higher up, it's going to help to give it that feeling of nature. So let's actually start in this little corner down here. I'm going to put a little bit of gum arabic on. I've got water on my brush and I'm going to go straight in just with the green that I've got. Just see how it looks. I think that's a little bit bright and a little bit light. I'm just going to take a bit of this colour here. I may warm it up in places as well with more yellow. You want to make sure it doesn't become too much like the colours around it.
Just adding some yellow there. You know, I could spend more time carefully planning this, but I do just like to have a vague idea of what I'm doing with it and then go in. Now this bud here, this brown bud, is really quite dark, so I'm going to go fairly light next to it. One thing to be careful of is that you don't start the other side with a colour that's completely unrelated. It can end up looking like a patchwork quilt and like nothing sort of goes together. Which, you know, that can be an effect if that's what you're going for. But I like to keep a little bit of consistency if I'm going for a more natural effect. And I'm just going to work around like this. Now, I didn't put the gum arabic on the paper that time because I still feel like there's a fair bit on my brush. But I'm just going to pick up a little and add some in. As I said, you have a lot longer to work on this now because everything is going to dry a lot more slowly. Coming round this petal now. And you can see that it's nice and dark, so it's really going to show the light of that petal off later on. I'm going to keep working up this side. At the moment, we're not looking at specific objects in the background. We'll look at that next.
Now, as well as just creating abstract shapes, we can also give the impression of real objects in the background. One of the other things that I like to use gum arabic for is actually water reflections. I think I've shown that on the channel before, but if you'd like a fuller tutorial on that one, do let me know in the comments. We're going to hint at background objects. They're going to be quite soft. In fact, when using gum arabic, it's impossible to get a sharp edge, which is going to push these items to the back. It's fantastic for with florals and botanicals and garden paintings, just to hint at something in a background. For instance, if I had pink flowers in the foreground, I could give the impression that there were more bushes or soft areas of pink flowers in the background. Here we've got white flowers with a little bit of pink, so let's have a go at doing that.
Well, so far so good, but you know, nothing particularly interesting going on. So let's now do a few special effects. So I'm going to take the gum arabic up and over a bit of a larger area. Now you'll see that I've got some paint on my brush. It's kind of light green. I'm not worried about that because I'm going to do the area light green basically. So I'm going to take the gum arabic up. What I'm going to do down here is just get some light green with some sort of darker green marks in. You can see we have these sort of background shadows here, so let's get some kind of effect like that. So we'll just go up. It still does dry at, you know, a pace, so you don't want to take it over. You know, I wouldn't paint it on the whole background. You want to sort of paint a bit, add some paint on, do a bit more. Just work your way up. So I'm going to go in with, I'll mix some green with some yellow and we'll go a little bit lighter. So we get a bit more an interesting colour there. It still needs to be dark enough that it shows off this nice petal here. And I'll probably try and go a little darker further towards the edges as well. And then what we can do is I can go straight in. I'm picking up a bit of the blue and the green on my paintbrush, and you know, we can start getting some shapes in. Maybe we have an idea of leaves here. And then as I come closer to these petals, which I do want to stand out, I'm going to go in this place just a little bit darker. I think as well, a bit of an uncomfortable line starting here. We'll just do this as well. Again, giving me the opportunity to go as dark as possible around the white petals. Now I'm coming up the left-hand side and I just felt like using more yellow up here. Sometimes as you get higher, you want colours to be lighter and brighter. I now want to get the effect of there being perhaps some other white flowers behind, maybe in the distance. I've got this area here. So the first thing I'm going to do is get some brown coming up. So I've got the idea of perhaps some stems. I'm just going to use some paint that I mixed earlier. I've changed to a bit of a bigger brush just to speed me up. I'll move between brush sizes as I need to. Just like ordinary watercolours, the less watery it is, the less it'll run. So I'm just going to keep my brush fairly dry here. And I'm just going to come in like this and just get an idea of things growing up and out. Mix a bit more blue in with that. It's a little bit warmer than I would like it. What I'm going to do now is work up with mostly clean water. We don't want everything up here too bright and clear because it could come forward too much and almost distract from what else is going on. So I'm just going to grab a little bit of pink and use some of that in places. And I can actually see the photograph that I'm working from just off camera. So just getting an idea that there might be something going on here. And then we'll make the rest of that appear by adding greens around it and maybe some blues and just almost, you know, using kind of a bit of negative painting to give the idea that there may be some petals going on there. You can see I've just gone over the edge of that slightly. I'm going to change to a smaller brush. Also come off the end of the gum arabic, so I'm going to add a little bit more in, just like this. And just go in with a smaller brush now and just start making sure that we've got nice crisp edges around the things that we've already painted, because of course we want those to appear really bright and crisp. This stuff in the background we want to be a little bit more here and there. Coming off the edge of the gum arabic here, so I'm just going to put a little bit of water along there till I have a moment to deal with it. And it's run a bit, so I'm going to try and get a little bit more white higher up. As I said, you don't want to distract too much from what's in the foreground. I'm going to go in down here. I'll add some gum arabic in as well and just come in with some more greens as I come down. Now I've come down the right hand side fairly plain because it was getting rather busy over this side. So I've just got this bottom right hand corner to do now. I want to get it a bit lighter, a bit brighter, and just with some of those dark shadowy crisscrosses across it from the original photograph. So I'm going to go in, changing to the larger brush just to apply the gum arabic. There's some green on my paintbrush, doesn't matter at all. Let's get some bright there. I need to go dark over here. It's not realistic that it would be so dark here and then just go to sort of light and bright. So let's work some of that darker colour in too. Using more than one paintbrush can be so helpful just to stop you having to keep rinse your brush, which of course will dilute the gum arabic as well. So I'm going to come here like this, get some nice bright greens in here, perhaps even a touch of yellow. Again, let's go darker at the top because the other side of that flower is dark. And then we'll start to work in some of these crisscross shapes from the original photograph, but I'm not worrying too much. You know, I'm not going over and looking at it and trying to replicate exactly what I'm seeing. Just going to carry on down to the bottom. My painting is finished. It's a bit of a sticky mess at the moment. I'll move it along so you can see all of it. I'll put a picture up of how it looked at the end. It's going to need some considerable drying time. I'll probably remove a few more pencil marks at the end as well. There's a slight feeling of madness about it, but that's just my painting style.
Just a reminder before you leave this video to pop down into the video description. Not only will you find details of all the products I've used today, but you can also download some free downloadable PDFs and guides. There are even some free courses that you can take down there. Please do remember that your support on this channel, liking, sharing, subscribing, or if you're looking for an art course, looking at one of mine first, all of this helps me to make more videos here for you on this channel. Don't forget to leave me a comment as well and tell me what you would like me to do next, what subjects you would like me to cover. Now, today's painting would not have been possible without a good background in drawing. I'm going to leave a link to one of my most successful drawing videos. You can watch that one right now.